Alhamdulillah, Alhamdulillah wahdah, wassalatu wassalamu ala man la nabiyya ba'dah, amma ba'd. Today we'll cover Salatul Marid, inshallah ta'ala. One bit that was left from last lesson about Qadha prayer for traveler. So if a traveler missed his prayer while he was traveling, he couldn't complete it for whatever reason, it's a major sin to miss your prayer for no reason. But there must have been some reason. So now he decides to do the compensation for that, means he is trying to make up for that loss. So if he missed his prayer as a traveler, then he would make up as a traveler prayer. So he was on his way to Birmingham and he spent some days there, less than 14 days, and he couldn't do, say, one of the Dhuhr prayers. So he was supposed to do two fard. When he came home, he realized, and then he wanted to make up for that. Now he is doing a make-up prayer for that Dhuhr which he missed as a traveler. He would do only two fard for that. Obviously, Sunnah and Nawafil, you do not do any compensation for, you do not make up for those. So there's no qada for Sunnah and Nawafil. For Witr, which is wajib, and fard prayers, you have to make up the prayers. And if it was during the travel, you would make up as a qasr prayer, shortened, which is two for Dhuhr, Asr, and Isha. And vice versa. If you miss some prayer, God forbid, as a resident, and you got some time while you were traveling, and you happened to be free doing nothing, and you decided to make up for some of the missed prayer while you were resident, you would still do four there. So here, there's no allowance for cutting it short while you're doing the qada for the prayer, which was fard as the resident. So it would be all based on what was due on you rather than what is your current situation. So normally the factor that is considered here is if at the end of the prayer time you were resident or a traveler. So if you were traveling to more than 48 miles and coming back from there, say after Maghrib prayer, you decided to come back home, or after Isha prayer from Birmingham, say. So Isha time started there, for example, at say 8 o'clock. You came home, you didn't pray Isha there, you rather traveled after Isha, 9 o'clock, say, from there, but you were back home in London, say about 11 o'clock. Now, if you wanted to do, or if you did your Isha prayer in Birmingham, you would have done two fard there straight away, and your sunnah and witr, and then you reach home, no problem, that is fine, you've done the right thing. If you didn't pray there and then you came home, and this is still time for Isha, which it is 11 o'clock, still Isha time remains until Fajr time. So then you will pray all four rakat. You will not cut it short, thinking that since it became obligatory upon me when I was in Birmingham, although I didn't do it there, shall I do it here as two? No, you would do all four, because what is considered is where you are at the end of the time, last part of the time of that prayer. So if you were as a resident, you will pray full rakat. If you were a traveler at that point, then you pray two rakat for farad. Okay, so that should be very clear, I hope. Now, Salatul Marid, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given this dispensation for those who are sick and unwell, so they can pray while sitting down, but not when they do not feel like doing it. There has to be a physical reason for that, a medical reason. For example, if they're unable to stand in the prayer, they cannot stand up for qiyam, or they can, but it is very difficult. There will be a lot of pain. Or although they haven't got pain yet, but if they did stand up for say 5 to 7 minutes of fard prayer or whatever, it would aggravate their illness, or it may delay their recovery. So the doctor says you shouldn't stand up for more than say 30 seconds. So standing in qira'ah and qiyam, surah Fatiha and the surah after that would take a good minute or two. So if they fear that it would delay their recovery, then they are allowed to pray sitting. And when Sharia allows us to sit and pray, it is sitting on the ground. Sitting on the ground. That is the default position. You cannot sit on anything higher than the ground. It has to be the ground, floor, earth. Obviously, if you have something on top of that, like a sheet, prayer mat, carpet, that's fine. Provided when you perform your sajda or you touch the ground, you can feel the hardness of the earth. So that is fine. Not hanging in the air. And you are allowed to sit. If you can't sit the normal way of prayers, then you can sit by crossing your legs. You can sit on the ground if you do not feel comfortable or you've got pain and you can't sit cross-legged or the normal way, folded legs, then you can keep your legs stretched and extended outward towards even Qibla is fine as well. In general terms, it is disliked to point your feet towards Kaaba, especially during prayers. But if you have some illness, some pain, some trouble, you are allowed to sit on the ground like this and pray, provided you have one of those excuses to not stand in prayer. Remember, qiyam, which is standing, is an integral part of the prayer. It is a fard, it is a wajib, it's rukun. You have to stand up in prayer. If someone is unable to do ruku or sujood, but they can lean forward a little bit, then you can just do your prayer by moving your head for bowing down and also for prostration. One can sit down on the ground, the start of their prayer, and for ruku, for bowing, they just move down a little, bend down a little bit, and for sajda, they should bend down a little bit more than that. The difference has to be there between your ruku and sajda. You can't bend this much for ruku and the same amount for sajda. There has to be a bit more bending forward for your sajda. Otherwise, the prayer will be invalid because you have done your ruku but not the sajda. Okay, obviously, this is for someone who could do it. So, many a time you would see people lifting stuff, a sheet, a board, or something in front of their head because they think that they cannot bow down or they cannot prostrate on the ground. So they prostrate on something hard. They make a sort of table, a stand, a shelf of some sort, which is in front of them, and they bow down on that. They do sajda on that. That is not permissible. That is not allowed. You shouldn't put anything in front of you to put your head on while you're sitting and praying. Rather, you just bend forward a little bit for ruku and a bit more for sajda if you cannot stand up. But if someone has done that and they prayed on the ground while putting their head on something, some elevated stuff, some high stuff, like a board or something, then their prayer would be considered valid, provided they bent down more for their sajda than for their ruku. So for ruku, they did this much. So for sajda, they should do more than that. So if they put their head on that board in front of them while sitting on the ground for ruku as well as sajda, so their prayer is not valid. But if they did only a little bit and not on top of that board, but for sajda they bent and did on the board, their prayer is fine, their prayer is valid, yet they shouldn't be doing it. You do not need to put anything in front of you to do ruku or sajda. You just bend down a little bit for ruku, a bit more than that for the sajda. If someone cannot sit down, they can even lie on their side, on their back or on their side. But it is better to lie on your back. Lying on your back, obviously, then the Qibla is straight in front of you. You're lying on your back in the bed as a sick person. Your Qibla is straight in front of you. Now, during this posture, even your feet are towards Qibla. So it is better to put a cushion under your neck or under your head as a pillow or something, so that your face is not looking up while you're lying in the bed. Rather, it is looking in front, which is Qibla. So you position yourself in such a way that your head is elevated a little bit with pillow and you are facing towards Qibla, which is towards your feet, and you lift your legs up, you fold your leg standing up. So you make sure that the feet or the knees are elevated in such a way that the feet do not face Qibla. So you don't extend it, don't keep it stretched, rather bend it and raise your knees. Obviously, if possible, if there was pain with that due to some operation and you can't move, lie in bed and pray as much as possible. If someone is even unable to move their head for ruku and sajda, they cannot bow down or bend forward at all, and this illness continues for more than 5 prayers, which is about 6 prayers, then they are exempted. If they haven't got any problem with their mind, the conscience is clear, means they are conscious, they are not unconscious, they haven't become ill in such a way that they are intubated or they are completely unaware of the surroundings. If they can see, hear, even if they can't move their neck for whatever reason, may Allah save us all from such illnesses, then in that case, if that illness extended for more than 5 prayers, which is about 6 prayers time gone, then according to vast majority and the most soundest of the 2 opinions, that there's no qada, you're exempted from those prayers. If it was only 5 prayer or less, then you have to make up, provided that your mind was functioning okay. If someone cannot even move their head and they're so sick that they're lying in the bed, but they can move their eyebrows or eyelashes or eyelid, they can move up and down like this, then they shouldn't pray, because sajda or the prostration is done with the head, not with the eyes. Okay, so you then leave those, and inshallah Allah would forgive you because you have a valid shari reason. Now, there has been this general fatwa from Hanafi school especially, that if you cannot do your sajda or ruku, then you are exempted from qiyam as well. But there has been another view, which is in keeping with other schools, other 3 schools as well, that if you can stand up, then try to stand up. And that is, which is more preferred of the views, even in Hanafi school, inshallah ta'ala. So everyone who has got some illness while they're performing their prayer sitting on the ground, but they think they can stand up, although they cannot do their sajda or ruku, they should stand up, begin their prayer. When it comes to ruku or sajda time, where they cannot bend for whatever reason, then they should sit down on the ground and then bowing, bend down a little bit for prostration sajda, bend down a little bit more. And then for qiyam, stand up again. So it depends on whether they are able to stand up or not. If they are not able to, then it's fine. Now, if someone was completely fine and healthy and they had no problem, and during the prayer, they became unwell. So whatever he could do, he should continue. And if you can't do that, so first or second rakat he is fine. Third rakat he became unwell, or he felt very unwell and about to, like get significant pain or whatever, can't bend down any further. So then he can sit down and he can do rest of his prayer by moving his head a bit, as the sick person would do. So if he started off with the sound health, but then became unwell, so you carry on whatever you can. Fattaqullaha mastata'tum. Fear Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as much as you could, means whatever is in your capacity, go for it. Whatever you can't do, leave it to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and Allah will forgive you. And vice versa, the reverse. The person was completely unwell and was praying due to a pain that he had, or for any other reason. But during the prayer, he realized that actually I feel completely fine. I am now able to do something. I can stand up and I can do my ruku and sajda. Then he can continue with his prayer. And the reason for that is you cannot go from weaker to the stronger generally. So if you carried on, because that may be your perception, it may be that you end up having some trouble afterwards. Just finish your prayer and move on. Now, if someone was praying by moving his head forward and backward, couldn't do sajda, couldn't do ruku, but he became completely well during the prayer, say after second rakat, third rakat, or first rakat, then he needs to start his prayer all over again, because the health would dictate that he is not excused from performing all the major faraid action, which is standing and ruku and sajda, which he can do now. So he should start from the beginning. If someone became unwell by losing consciousness, maybe for operation, or became insane, he has whole one prayer duration not been missed out. So his unconsciousness was not for a whole duration, then he would make up for that prayer. But again, if he has done more than 5 prayers, 6 prayers, times expired, then he is excused from making up all the previous prayers. So fainting for, it was 5 prayers. It wasn't 1 actually, it should be 5. So if someone fainted and had less than 5 prayer or 5 prayer, then he has to make up for all those prayers. If it was more than 5 prayers and he was unconscious for whole 24 hours, then he is exempted. So that's the issue today. So in summary, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us this principle, fattaqullaha mastata'tum, fear Allah as much as you can. So whatever we can do, we should try and do. Now, the most important issue, which is obviously not tackled in the book, because the book was written many, many years ago, a few hundred years ago, actually, the modern phenomena of praying on chairs. And it's so common these days that you feel sometimes that in future we perhaps would have most or majority of the people praying on chair. You would find very young people, when they look okay and well, they may have some pain, little bit of a sprain. They played football and got a bit of ankle ache, knee pain or something, and they sit on the chair and pray. Remember, the prayer is only valid on chair if someone cannot perform prayers while sitting on the ground in any way. If they cannot sit on the ground by folding their legs, by crossing their legs, or by extending them towards Qibla, none of these is possible for that person due to illness of some sort, pain of some sort. Then he is allowed to perform while sitting on the chair. And when someone is unwell enough to pray the prayers on the chair, they do not need to put anything in front of them for sajda or ruku. Likewise, they do not need to put their hand in the air as some people do while they're bending down a little bit for ruku. They keep their hand in the air in front of their knees. That is not right. You just keep your both hands on your knees for your ruku, for your sajda while you are praying on the chair. As I said, if you have some long-term illness and you are not well enough to sit down on the ground, then you have an excuse to perform your prayer while sitting on the chair. But you must speak to some scholar, some medical professional, someone to advise you whether you are allowed to do so or not. Most people, when they perform their prayer on the chair, they actually do not get their prayer validated because they are missing out on a fard action, actually more than that. And many a time they are able to sit down on the ground. So make sure that if you ever have to do it, ask someone who could explain to you, inshallah ta'ala, with your situation. Now, with regards to wudu, while someone is that unwell and sick, so they are in bed. So ideally, they would try to do wudu if the use of water does not affect their health. And that could be through some other agent, someone else can help them out, family member, some worker, some friend, doctor, whoever is available to make you get your wudu done. You should do it. If you can do it, but there's no one to help you, and you can't do it on your own, you need someone to do it for you, then you're allowed to have tayammum. If the disease get aggravated and you fear that it would aggravate, and doctors say that you shouldn't wash your limb or whole body, then again you can go for tayammum. You can ask for assistance from someone. What if you are not sure about your clothing? There may be some blood on it due to operation. There may be that you were cleaned by the nurses, you do not know how clean you are. In that case, go for the default position. If you feel that there is, if you can see any sign of impurity, blood or something else on your clothes, then obviously you have to wash that bit, that part of the body or the clothes. But if you don't see anything, don't just assume. The default position is that you are pure and clean because you have taken shower before you came to hospital, for example, or you were in the state of wudu. At least you were not sexually defiled, or you were not in major impurity. Then you are considered pak because there's no evidence to prove that you are impure. Obviously, if they made a cut on your tummy, on your arm for the operation, on your leg, and you see that there's no sign of blood, then that's fine. If there was some sign of blood, then you wash it, get someone, and if they say that you can't touch, it's all been bandaged, all been covered, then fine, you can just do wiping on that with wet hand if you could use water, or if you're doing tayammum, then inshallah ta'ala it's fine anyway. So there are many different ways of tackling the situation that someone is unwell and they need some help, and we should just continue to communicate with some scholars, get your individualized prescription, which would do you a good and it will be inshallah ta'ala useful. Rather than trying on your own, doctors never say, oh, you can wash. In fact, they say you can wash, no problem at all. But we feel maybe I shouldn't. We just try to be overcautious. Now I'm not going to wash it because it may get worse. Well, the doctors told you already, then you have no reason to believe otherwise. And Sharia would not take that into consideration. I was very apprehensive, I was a bit concerned, I was a bit anxious. You do not get that at all. That's not, an allowance for people if they are overly anxious about something. So this is a matter of your prayer. You don't want to lose out on your prayer, your ibadat. Okay. So it's extremely important that we know how are we supposed to pray in that particular circumstance and take advice from people, inshallah ta'ala, and do the things properly. And if there was any concern, ask even afterwards and rectify that. Make up for those prayers if you didn't do properly, if you did it without proper postures, not thinking right, or not knowing it. And remember, not knowing is not an excuse. So many people say, oh, I didn't know. It doesn't matter whether you knew it or not. Not knowing is not an excuse, as it is not an excuse for any worldly matter. If you said, I didn't know that the speed limit was 20 on this street, I didn't see that sign of 20. It doesn't matter whether you knew it or not. That's your responsibility. You should have known it. That's even bigger crime from you, not knowing what you should know. So try to figure out, find out what was the trouble, how did you do it, if there was any issues, sort it out inshallah ta'ala, and have the courage to fulfill the command of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Don't feel that, oh, I've got too much to do in that case because I was in hospital for 2 weeks, there were too many prayers. Doesn't matter, inshallah ta'ala. I know it's difficult, but it's only good for you. It's not gonna harm you in any way. You'll get more reward, inshallah ta'ala. So have that courage and enough enthusiasm that I want to please my Lord. It was my responsibility. I've been falling short of, I have done my, I haven't done my homework. I didn't know it properly. I didn't ask at the right time to the people. Then it's my fault. So just take your responsibility, be sensible, and act accordingly. Mend it, rectify it, and inshallah ta'ala, Allah will make it easy in this dunya and the life hereafter. And don't depend on things like, oh, but Allah is Kareem, so let me just not do it. Allah is Kareem, that is why we should do more. Allah is Rahim and Rahman, He gives us more, so we should do even more. So when you find out that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is ever so merciful, we should be doing more actions in order to please Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is why Sayyidina Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, when he was performing his tahajjud and he had his feet swollen, the lady Aisha, Sayyida Aisha radiallahu anha, she said, Ya Rasulullah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has forgiven all your sins. You have got no blemish at all in you're just perfect. So why you are so concerned and bothered? Why are you concerned about this? Why are you standing in prayer for that long period? The answer of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam is amazing. He said, "Afala akuna abdan shakura? Shall I not become the most grateful servant of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala by doing more prayers?" Means this is the reason. Allah is so merciful. Allah has given me so much. That is why I feel obliged to do more, inshallah ta'ala. Okay. Now the question is, if we are a traveler and we would like to continue with our qasr prayer, and in order to get that qasr prayer, I can delay my travel back. That's up to you. You're perfectly allowed to do so. Now, you need to ask yourself, is it that we really want to get the blessing of that qasr prayer? Or is it that who would do 9 rakat? Who would do extra sunnah and nawafil? Let me just get it out of the way, stay for extra few hours here. I was planning to leave after Asr, but then just stay until maybe Isha time, do quickly Maghrib and then Isha, and then run home afterwards so that when we are at home, we don't have to pray. Now, it may be that I have got to go to work tomorrow, and if I prayed my Isha there earlier, by the time I come home on my journey, I might not have my wudu. It would be 11 o'clock or 1 o'clock, and I might find myself lazy to be able to perform my wudu, and might even, pray without much, you know, concentration. So I, in that situation, would like to do my properly done prayer here, so that I do two fard and my two sunnah and then three witr, for example. And when I come home, at least I'm done with my prayer and it's at the earliest time. And as a qasr, inshallah, as a gift from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So that's fine. So it's all down to your intention. What are you thinking? Is the thought that let's get it out of the way so we can go home and have fun? Or we're going to that party? Or is it just, as I said, so depending on what you see, what is the intention behind it, it is perfectly fine. But you are allowed. This is all up to you. You know yourself better. Judge yourself. No one else can judge and explain to you what you should be doing. But if you feel that I'm not doing it in order to fulfill my desires and base, thoughts, but inshallah ta'ala, then it's fine. So the next question: if we were to travel after Dhuhr prayer, can we pray 2 rakat of Asr before leaving the home destination? Before the Asr? No. According to Hanafi school, there's difference of opinion. According to Hanafi school, you cannot combine the prayer and you cannot prepone any prayer. And the reason for that is categorically mentioned in Quran. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, Inna salata kanat ala al-mu'minina kitabam mawquta. Indeed, prayer has been prescribed for the believers at appointed time. And those appointed time were shown to us by Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam when Sayyidina Jibreel alayhi salam came to him and spent good 2 days and showed him the earliest time, the first day, the end time, the next day. He led Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam in those 10 prayers and told him that these are the times between these two, beginning and end time, your ummah should perform your prayer. And then ummah knows, and Quran is categorical, hadith, many hadiths to prove that there are 5 prayers a day, and that becomes the norm. To change it from Quranic injunction, from hadith mutawatira and the ijma of ummah that there are 5 prayers a day, you must come up with something equally strong, like another Quranic ayah, but there is none, or hadith mutawatira, but there is none, or ijma ummah, but there is none. So based on that, you are safer, because even if you were to believe that we can combine this dispensation, those imams who, based on some ahadith, consider it to be okay to combine as a traveler, they do not say it's must to combine. None of the imams ever said that it is must to combine your prayer. They say it's allowed. But Imam Abu Hanifa rahmatullah, his view is it is completely impermissible because it goes against Quran. Now, it is not that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam cannot change the Quranic injunction. Obviously, whatever he says is the meaning of this ayah, we take it. But since there's 1 or 2 narrations which can be understood, the Sahih hadith I'm talking about, the Sahih hadiths are about combining at a later time. So end of Dhuhr time and beginning of Asr time, combining at that time, is proven from ahadith of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So Ahnaf would say, the Hanafi fuqaha would say, what it means is that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam and the Sahaba would shorten their prayer by doing the first prayer at the end time, just close to the end, and the next prayer at the beginning of the next prayer time. For example, Asr and Dhuhr. So Dhuhr ends, say, 3:30. So they would perform their Dhuhr at 3:15. By the time they finish their Dhuhr, it's 3:30 Asr time, they would do their Asr. So apparently, it sounds like they've combined it, but they actually haven't combined the two within the same time. Rather, they prayed both within their own times. And that is why you would not find any hadith where Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam or Sahaba ever combined Fajr and Dhuhr or Isha and Fajr or Asr and Maghrib. Why is that? Why can't we combine Asr and Maghrib? You've never find anyone ever did it. Why that is? And that is the sole reason, because these are the two prayers, Dhuhr and Asr and Maghrib and Isha. These are the two prayers. Between them, there is no dislike time. Dhuhr ends, Asr starts, they're completely fine. You can delay your Dhuhr to the end of Dhuhr time. It is not disliked if there was a reason. So as a traveler, there's a reason. And in those days, especially when people used to travel on camels, on foot, on donkeys and horses, it was a big task for everyone to get off, get ready, find some water, do their wudu, and then move on. And second prayer comes, say, in a couple of hours and do the same exercise again. It was not at all feasible. It was very, very troublesome, which is not the case now. It is much, much easier. We can take as many breaks as we want through our cars or whatever. So there's a lot more allowance nowadays. So it's much, much easier these days. So anyway, so even if someone follow that opinion because they follow Imam Shafi, for example, rahmatullah alayhi, or Imam Malik, rahmatullah alayhi, or Imam Ahmad ibn Hanbal, rahmatullah alayhi, then they do that, that's fine. But as Hanafis, we consider it to be much more, I think it's safer not to combine as per Quranic ayah, and also the fact that the other Imams never say that you must do it. Yes, the hadith, as I said, will be understood with the fact that they mean apparent combining, not actual combining. They were combined in such a way that they were both prayed at the end or the beginning time rather than outside of their appointed time. I hope it clarifies. If someone is a resident, then becomes a traveler during Zohar and then reaches their accommodation with Mr. Zohar and it becomes Asr time, do they pray too? Yes, we just mentioned that. So they would do, it depends on where were you at the end of that prayer time. If you were traveler at the end of Zohar time, when the Asr time started, you were still traveler. So you came from Birmingham. By the time Asr started, you didn't pray your Zohar there, but by the time Asr started, you were within the 48-mile area, within the vicinity of your city, within the locality. But when you reached home, you missed your prayer. You couldn't do your, because you didn't have your wudu, you lost your wudu, you just slept. And when you realize, actually, I missed my Zohar, my plan was to come home and then pray Zohar, but unfortunately I didn't. But you were within the city, you were not a traveler at that point, then you would do 4. Even if the Zohar time started there, and the vice versa. So it depends on your last time of the prayer, what status you were in. Whatever was the last time of the prayer, end time of the prayer, and what is your status at that time, a traveler or a resident. If you're a resident, you would do 4. If you're a traveler, you would do 2. Hope it clarifies, inshallah. Okay. Your personal home is only the home that you own on, and that is your home. Your friend, family, relatives' homes are not considered your home, even if you feel at home in. Likewise, when you migrated here, for example, and you decided that you're here now, and you want to go back to your own country, your parents' house, your in-laws, or wherever you go, unless you have your family there, your children, your wife there, that house, which is your father's house now, you already migrated to this country, for example, then that house is not your own house. You would still be a traveler there. You would do qasr as long as you were there for less than 14 days or 14 or less days, and vice versa. So if you have moved to a new city, Northampton in your case, and sister is in London, and you happen to live with her initially, but now you move to a different city, different place, which is more than 48 miles away, then where you migrated or moved to, that is your house, that is your place, that is where your family is. So from there, wherever you go after 48 miles, you will be a traveler. Jazakallahu khaira. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.